what we have here is the tomb of Noct. And if I pronounce this stuff wrong, please correct me because I'm just, an amateur here. And this was in 1425 BC. And if you can see it, you can see it's very stylized. Notice that the chest area is like facing front, even though the legs are facing forwards, and the arms are in a very rigid position. The eye is a front view of the eye instead of a side view. Instead of a side view. So it's not, representational. It is an official pose prescribed by the priests, and this was the only way they could do any of these depictions in these tombs, because that's the only accepted style. But as you can see, this is a pharaoh, and they show them smiting their enemies or hunting, and this is a hunting scene, and he's catching birds, and he has this serpent or a stick or something, and he's hunting in the afterlife. And note also, look, you've got some wildlife down here, some birds at the bottom, some fish. There's a cat helping him hunt. It's called a bird. I thought that was fascinating. There's servants around him, and notice that the size of anyone who isn't a pharaoh is going to be smaller based on their status. So the servants are depicted as very small, and the more noble people are depicted a little larger, but no one is as big as the pharaoh. So this is pretty standard for pre-Akhenaten times.
Can you show us that cat again?
Yeah. Can you see the picture? Hold on. I'll see if I can zoom it. You see the cat right about at the guy's knees?
Oh, yeah.
See him right there? Can you see my cursor?
Yes, it's like Morris the cat.
Yeah, and he's got a bird in his mouth. He's catching him. And he has some sort of gold chain or something around his girth there. So I think he's a tame cat. I thought that was pretty wild. But that has nothing to do with what I was going to talk about. But anyway, you see it's fairly stylized. Everybody's eyes are in an odd view. The bodies are rigid. The feet, if you can see, there's no differentiating between right hand and left hand. It's just one hand. You can't, they weren't going for realism. All right. And as you go in a little further, let's see which one this one is. Figure 5 is, I can't pull up 2 screens at once, so I can't tell you. I have notes to this, but I can't work it. Okay. This is also from Noct's tomb, but it's showing there's a little different influence creeping in. See how the postures are a little more relaxed, and even though these guys are all the same here, you've got a musician here, and look, his face is different, his eye is closed, and you've got people interacting with each other. These ladies one's offering fruit to another. Their faces are slightly different, and you've got one servant girl here who is touching the chin of a higher class lady over on the left there, and that's important to know because this gesture is shown a lot in the artwork of Amarna. But you can see you're getting a little more natural look to the figures. They're still not completely in representational poses, but they're better than that stiff-armed posture with the body half-turned that is very typical of earlier artwork.
Are these 18th dynasty?
Yes.
Okay. Are these microphones these fellows are talking in?
We're at, let me see. Oh, it does look like microphones. I believe they're lotuses. I think they're just presenting lotus blossoms. Um, and then here's the detail of the serving girl touching the chin of the higher born lady over here, and you've got a little bit of depth here with the way that the arms are laid out, but it's still not completely natural. It's still fairly stylized. And here's what I was talking about, where she's grabbing the arm and offering a piece of fruit and so forth. So that's a little different and a little more naturalistic than the older tomb paintings, but
Uh,
still, it's not what we get to at an Amarna. Now you'll see here, this is a progression. Some of the faces are starting to be a little different, and people are interacting with one another versus, well, there's some more interaction and some more natural movement, and a harp player and dancing girls who are moving. And this is so much different than that first photograph, getting a little more naturalism to the pictures. And here's a black and white copy of that. So they're playing some sort of musical instrument here, and they're showing front views of people, which is very rare unless you were a captive of war. That was like a pose that was very demeaning to you. It shows you were vanquished, but things are changing a little bit.
what about the Oriental-looking eyes? Are they stylized completely?
It is stylized. What they've done is they're taking in the view they put here, they put the front view on the side, on the profile side of the face, because they didn't know how to do the perspective of that, or they just weren't allowed to. But they almost all of them have these oriental shaped eyes, and that even gets more pronounced as we go on. And this is the first time ever. This is supposed to be wait a minute, let me see. This is a blind harpist right here. He doesn't see, his eyes shut. And he also looks sad. Look at his face. And you can see he's got fat roll.
The harp.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty astounding to see that so early.
And he's got a left hand and a right hand, and he has differentiated toes. And the sole of his foot is shown. And he's got little fat rolls on his belly, and he's more natural, a little roll behind his head. So you can see it's developing. So then you get on to the incipient Amarna phase. And that's not what I want. Where in this is a tomb picture, and you got to figure none of these artists really had work to look at from another artist, because these paintings were sealed up in tombs, and no one ever, you couldn't practice. So there may have been some set things that the priest said, you need to have this because this is the afterlife. All of this stuff were pictures to show what was there in the afterlife for the person who had died. So you have mourners here on the right, and you have bearers on the left taking furniture and food and goods to the tomb. And this is the wife. The reason they said that that's the wife is because the servant girl is helping prop her up, because she's mourning. And all of these guys, the mourners, would be paid mourners. You've heard of that in other societies, but they would come in and everyone would wail and carry on for the funeral.
Paula had a couple of comments there that are worthwhile. One is are you there? Okay.
Yeah.
One is the lotus, she says, is allowing people to choose the drug of their choice. And in this, she figures this last picture is a funeral liturgy. Now you notice the classic stance of the women with their arms up in the air. That's the orant position.
Yes,
And
and
what
go
is
ahead.
on the heads of these men? Is that a casket?
I think it could be a casket. It didn't say, or it could be furniture. As this is a chair, that may be a traveling trunk, or possibly what we may. I don't know if it's in this set of slides or not, or this paper, but there was something that was found in Tut's tomb that's a traveling case, and it looks very much like the description of the Ark of the Covenant. Um, it's almost identical to the description and the way it's built too. Um, but you can see in this side, you've got, yes, you've got the standard postures here, and you've got the repeated people right here. They're all the same, all these mourners. But then you're getting different, let's see if it shows. You've got, yes, you've got different faces. We're getting a little more naturalistic. You can see the tears on their faces, and it's starting to change. This is an older version where, see, the faces are all the same, the postures are all the same, the headdresses are all the same. So it's starting to change. And this is, let me see, figure 18 is,
In a
these
funerary
are mourners in a funerary boat, roughly contemporaneous with Ramos's 1365 BC, a frenzied and chaotic group of women, and they look at the hysterical postures here. Everyone is carrying on, and it's so much different than, say, this photo, where everything is very orderly. So things are changing, and I read a little bit about the development of the merchant class around this time in Egypt. So I'm wondering if there were that had some effect on their artwork as well. And here's a more normal funerary bark, and there's the one of the gods. I think I'm not sure if that's Osiris or not. I think it is. And this is more normal for their tomb art for a funeral. I want to get on to the later ones, though. Okay, this is 21. Gotta find it. This, I believe, is Akhenaten.
one of the
Nope, I'm
reasons
Amenhotep the Four. Yeah, Akhenaten. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jackson.
one of the reasons for the unified look in some of these is because of Ma'at. The god Ma'at was also a kind of a cultural icon that really meant harmony, everything in harmony, everybody in their place, everybody doing what they were supposed to do. And this art that we're looking at now has people doing what they want to do or what they're bound to do. And that was something that was not allowed in
Yes,
Egyptian art before Amenhotep III. So I've read.
yes. He started. It started to come out with to change in his reign, and then we're into Amenhotep the Fourth, who is Akhenaten, and this is still stylized, but I want you to notice, look at his face compared to the later representations. It's not all deformed, but this is still fairly old school here.
And his belly too.
Yeah, he's trim. See, this is the classic pose. They were fit fighting men, you know. But also notice here in his chair, see the outstretched wing, the protective wings? Those are those feature a lot in the later stuff. All right. And I'm sorry I'm not doing a great job here. I tried to pull up my notes along with this, but I can't do both and share screen. And here is one where the changes are starting to come. This is the stylized change now. This is Akhenaten, and this is Nefertiti. So notice though, look, slender neck, slender arms, pronounced chin and jaw. Same thing with him. Sloped forehead back up with a very strange profile, and same with him. And notice, I love these little hands of the rays of the
life.
Yeah, there's the life. I think this is the sign for the ruler, but I'm not sure. But look, they're offering life to the nostrils of the people, and it's but you can see, look, here's a progression from that last slide. Akhenaten is starting to look a little more female. He's got a little pot belly. They're showing a breast a little bit, but the pose here is, notice he's shown in profile. He's not twisted sideways, and his arms, they're trying to show some depth here of him reaching forward. And she's grasping her right arm with her left hand, although it still looks like the hands aren't right and left on her. They do look like they're right and left on Akhenaten, and that's a huge change. All right, let's see. This is a more typical pose again of, this is a pre-Amarna. This is Amenhotep, sorry, the third, and Ta. And you can see the difference in the pose and the difference in the slender build. You've still got the protective wings on the throne. And this is, who is this guy? This was interesting. This is affected artistic style, and this is Amenhotep III in Ta in front of an altar of heaped offerings. But look at the style here. It's starting to be very relaxed. There's a little pot belly. Face looks more natural. The eye is almost natural. Very well delineated toes and feet, right and left. And I wish I could see this. I wonder if I can zoom on it. One of these offerings showed animals. I don't know about this one, but there's a later one that does. So they have art depicting animals as offerings too, as well as fruit and vegetables. Or anyway, I'll try to speed this up a little bit. Now we get to the Yeah. There are some animals here, but they're not the only ones. Here is this is a foreshortened, they look squat because of the size of the panel. They had to make it fit. You've got the Aten and the rays of the Aten, and you've got the classic Akhenaten profile. Now, the reason that this fellow was saying for this is he believes that look that he has is sort of androgynous, because it's trying to show him as the son of, or a representation of, the Aten, who is a god that is neither male nor female. It's a creator god. So they're trying to show him as sort of neither male nor female, but with aspects of both. But we also note later that his wife, Nefertiti, they show her as very, very feminine, and the author of this paper thinks it's because they were trying to hearken her back to like an earth mother, and for her fertility and for her function as a mother. But I'm wondering as well, women were never given equal status in any of these paintings, but she is almost the size of him, and she is being shown worshiping with him, which has never happened before in the history of their art. So she's getting high honor here. But I'm wondering if she was not shown that way just because they wanted to show that it's all right for women to be recognized as worshiping, not that she was some sort of earth goddess.
Yeah. Also, in the Aten religion, everyone could worship.
Right.
And
That
also
was the
notice,
first.
yeah, he might have Marfan syndrome by then too.
I don't know. Um, some of this stuff is a little. I'm going to skip up a little faster. Oh, this is Nefertiti as. No, excuse me. Was it Akhenaten or Nefertiti?
Yeah, it looks like Akhenaten.
It might be. It might be Akhenaten as the Sphinx, but still, you've got the Aten, and you've got also the exaggerated features still.
The lion body was supposed to be symbolic of war.
Yes. And this one are from some of the tiles that they found. Okay, it's 32. When they tore this down, they took the rubble from it and they used it in another pylon, I believe at Karnak.
Yeah.
And as archaeologists recovered them, they were able to piece together the walls, the wall art, and restore them. So some of these are restored. All right, I want 31 Akhenaten in a mirror pose image, making offerings to the Aten form. Okay, the Amenhotep now appears as Akhenaten in his name, and stylistically, we see the new bodily proportions with the overgrown jaw, pot belly, and prominent buttocks to render the curious anatomy of the king, although not in a, well, it is in a very discreet manner. But this is certainly not the warrior physique that they show in the earlier art.
Are those some of the discarded shards?
Here are, yes, these.
Okay.
These are. Look at that. They've put it back together. And I'm sorry I can't see you guys' comments. I hope I'm not totally boring you guys to pieces. All right, this is the transitional phase, the Aten disc shining down on Akhenaten. And you've got some of the stiffness and angularity of the previous style. You've got the receding forehead, protruding jaws, and long, thin neck. And of the new style here, but he's still, it's not as bad as it gets later. Now, if it is indeed some sort of syndrome, does it get worse with age? Because this author of this paper believes that it was just it was a style only, and it was meant to be to show a link between him and a creator god that's neither male nor female. And here is another view of him that we've probably seen this one before. You've definitely got the wider hips and the pot belly. And notice a navel. That is new. That had not been in any Egyptian artwork before. And note, let's see, 34 is, I can't find. I don't want to take too long at this. But here's, wait a minute. androgynous nature of his physique is here emphasized by voluminous breasts and hips and plump thighs, and he had showed that he had pierced ears, and they thought he might have been a woman masquerading as a man, as Hatshepsut had, or else that he'd been castrated. And he appears in a loose gown like a woman's, and sometimes it's difficult to identify whether they're Akhenaten or Nefertiti on anatomical grounds alone. And a lot of archaeologists thought it was something strange going on when they first discovered all this, but things have changed a little bit, and some people's thinking that possibly it wasn't some disease. And look here, look at the detail on the foot. That's absolutely stunning. And there are little sockets where they would inlay stones for toenails. Look at the sandal detail. I mean, compared to that. And here's a model for making the feet that artists would use to make more feet. Look how realistic those are. They're beautiful.
Let me get Paula in here.
Sure.
These represent the achievement of perfection where the individual has tapped into, with help from the lotus, both male and female psyche. Balanced, ma'at, perfection. Nice.
Very good. Very well put. And here's a hand with a thumbnail. And notice the style of the long curved fingers. They look like the hands, the little hands on the Aten rays. I think they're beautiful. You have, here's, I don't know how you pronounce this exactly, or Shawabti, is that about right? They're the little statuettes that they would find in tombs, and also they found a lot of them in homes in Amarna. It was like a little household god for them, and that's Akhenaten. Notice the physique, but these are older ones, and they're not quite as, they're more stylized, but look how individualistic that is.
I always wondered, are these household gods, or are they just either effigies of their rulers, their ancestors, or dolls?
I think
figurines.
Yeah, I think it could be as simple as a figurine. I mean, there was a rising merchant and artisan class. They had a fair amount of, since they kicked out the, how do you pronounce it, Hyksos or Hyksos?
Hyksos.
All right, the Hyksos had been kicked out, and they had spread the Egyptian empire further than it had been. They were trading with all of the neighboring countries. They were swapping noble sons and daughters in marriage, and everything was going pretty well. They were prosperous, and the merchant class was growing and becoming prosperous. And I'm wondering if, art was appealing to some of these emerging classes, and they might have little figurines, like you say, in the homes of their pharaoh, of their ruler, and
it's hard to believe that he would tear down all the gods in Thebes, go down to Akhetaten, build a new city, and then everybody worshiping these little things that really look like figurines.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if he's, as monotheistic as it seems that he was, it doesn't follow that he'd be having little miniatures of him and his wife made for worship. But the bad thing is, though, that even though they were at ease, one of the reasons that he was taken out or killed or died or whatever happened to him, and then his name taken off of everything, is because they believe, because there was a lot of letters in the Amarna letters asking for help from the outpost and the allies, saying, hey, we're having trouble on the frontier, come help us. And he really didn't. And it was a rebellion starting on the borders. And um, things were not going so well, and they blamed it on him for not worshiping the old gods and disturbing the Ma'at and not, keeping everything in balance and harmony. So basically, they tried to restore it by wiping him and every trace of him out of their history.
There's another theory on that a plague came through at that time, decimating the armies.
Yes, I read that too.
And Paula also points out those figurines have writing on them. And so if we had captions, which we don't, we might know what they were and how they were used.
True. I don't have that. This guy doesn't say that what is written on these. And we've got more modern, more Amar statuettes. And I need to wrap this up because I don't want to take too long. But this is Nefertiti. And she's shown, with a very feminine figure, very rounded. Older too. Yeah, but look, see, she's got the extended jaw, but not quite like what they did for him. Let's see. This was interesting. I think this is hang on. 44. No, this is a royal official of Akhenaten.
It says I.
It's I, yes. Tentatively identified as I. Nefertiti's father is what this guy thinks. And look at the face. He doesn't look like a very friendly or happy person. And there's a side view of it. And then this is Akhenaten's face.
That's
here.
Incredible.
Look at that.
Yeah.
And this is, wait a minute, I believe this is too. This is an awesome one. I love this. I need 48. And I'm not going to talk about 48 where I can find it. There, look at, this is Akhenaten and this is Tut. So here's your difference after the fall of his whole idea. The artwork went somewhat backwards. See the long eye line. It's more representational than it was, but it's back to the Osirian look. And strangely, there was no tomb art, so to speak, of the underworld. In the afterlife kind of stuff in the tombs in Amarna, but Tut's tomb was full of it, so it got, it just got all taken away, all wiped away. I'm going to skip the stuff about Nefertiti a little bit because I'm going on kind of long here. I want to show you something interesting at the very end of this guy's thesis, and you guys can just look at the pictures as I scroll by. There's Nefertiti. The other thing is, look, she is making offerings to the Aten, and he's not around. That never, ever happened. It's like she was raised up as an equal. And I'm trying to, there's a chariot, but that's a traditional chariot. And I believe this is Tut in a chariot. But look, this is 62. This is, I believe this is Akhenaten in his chariot. And Nefertiti is in one of these pictures in a chariot. But look at there's the Aten and the rays. Oh no, there's Nefertiti behind him, holding on, and they're guiding the chariot. They're helping him, and there's another one here that's really neat. Look, guiding his hands on the reins and offering him the life and offering him support. And there's Nefertiti. She's whipping her horse. Look at that. It's a race. It's pretty neat to have that sort of thing shown in art, whereas it had all never been like that. And here's a king slaying a captive, and slaying a captive held by its hair. But we never get that with Akhenaten. He doesn't show any warrior tendencies. He's shown racing chariots, but never killing captives. However, this is Nefertiti, and I can't quite make out the image. It's not a great representation, but she's evidently chastising a slave girl. I think that's a whip in her hand, but I can't make it out. That was what the text said. So it showed her taking authority. And there's the famous bust of Nefertiti. And who is this? This is T.A. Yeah, that's a very unhappy looking person too. All right, let me get down to the end. The most interesting thing that this fella came up with in his conclusion was the fact that the whole city of Amarna was built on the sunrise side of the Nile, and the underworld was always pictured on the sunset side. So he was, through the artwork and the family art, which there's I got to find some of it, but there was a lot of it showing all of his daughters just seated very casually with him and his wife, and giving gifts to the people, the neck discs, and even the little kids were tossing them. This is where the author talks about the earth goddess and Nefertiti being perhaps some sort of subcult, which I don't think there's that much to support, but I could be wrong. There's a daughter.
They had 6 daughters, if I recall.
Yes, 6 daughters. Look here. Mother kissing the daughter, and the ray of the Aten giving life to them. And look at the feeling in that. It's so different, you know? But this was all about, this author says that it was a religion of light and love and family and kindness versus war and conquest and glorifying death in the afterlife. But mostly just death. They had a death cult with Osiris, and this was a life cult. And I thought it was kind of interesting that it was built on the sunrise side, and that the notch in the cliffs were where the Aten appeared at a certain time of the year, and it was where he emerged. Oh, here, look, here's the animals for the sacrifice here in the middle of this picture of Akhenaten and Nefertiti.
Those look like sheep.
Yeah.
My understanding was that they considered sheep like holy.
Huh, I didn't read that.
They hated sheep herders for that reason.
Oh, I read they hated sheep herders because the Hyksos were sheep herders, but they could be the other too. But here's the kids here, and they all have a little bit different faces, and they're all shown in, you know, here's the older and then the younger, and you see all the little rays coming down and taking the offering. And here's the one with the family. See there's Nefertiti holding the neck discs, and one of the daughters offering the neck disc. And there's that pose from that one of those first slides, where the little girl is cradling the chin of her mom, whereas the servant girl was cradling the chin of that other lady in waiting. And here are the people down here, receiving their acknowledgments in goods. And I'll just show you the rest of the slides here. There's some more of the children. And look how natural it is. You've got Akhenaten, Nefertiti, some of the children, and they're just relating in a normal sort of family thing. There's the gesture of the hand to the chin again, and she's cradling this one's head. And this is revolutionary in the artwork. And here's the Aten shining down with the rays and offering the Ankhs, and that's one that got destroyed. They think this is a reconstruction of it, of the family unit. And there's one that didn't get destroyed. You see, he's kissing his child. She's playing with her mom's headdress. This is like never been seen before, never been done before in their art. And it shows you, the way they thought about family and the light of the Aten, I think. But anyway, I'll show you the rest of these slides, but I'm about done here. And I hope it was entertaining and maybe educational a little bit. And I'll put the link to it in the think tank too, if you want.
Great. Yeah.
So you guys can read
we'll put this up on YouTube too.
Okay. But anyway, thank you all, and I'm going to cut it off about there.
And thank you. That was great. Great job. You guys might enjoy some old David Rolls presentations and lectures. We would. Where do we find those? And it was great to have you all with us, especially you, Paula. Haven't talked to you for quite some time. We need to get together. And I thank you all for coming, and let us end this, remembering that we'll get back together again next Wednesday night for another exciting episode.